This is an abbreviated version of what was presented at the HPA Tech Retreat 2022. We start with 3 great losses to the industry, and if you don't know these people, I urge you to look them up. I can also tell you that T-Mobile has rolled out 5G. Yes, these are actually things that T-Mobile is providing. Cinema is not dead. The number 3 all-time domestic box office hit is Spider-Man No Way Home, and that's not just a 2021 number, that's the all-time box office hit. A bit more on the numbers, though. It was almost more than the next 4 2021 movies combined, so maybe there's something special about that movie. And interesting to note that none of the 10 2021 Academy Award Best Picture nominees are in the list of 2021 top 10 domestic box office movies. So what's the big issue affecting us? It's not what breakfast roundtable we should attend tomorrow, it's sustainability. And Barbara Lang is here, and she has a new sustainability in media venture called Kibo 121. And I'd like to point out that there was a tech retreat last year. It was a virtual version, but it did exist. And Cedric Lejeune of Workflowers did a presentation on remote working and environmental impact. And it's kind of an interesting presentation. It's not an obvious conclusion one way or the other. NFTs, we will have a presentation from Michelle Munson of Alluvio on them. Samsung at CES was talking about a new TV feature, NFT support. But people are concerned about NFTs because of possible environmental impact. Here's one story that says selling an NFT uses as much energy as a European Union resident's electricity consumption for 1.5 months. Now, these are debated, but it's possible that NFTs are causing environmental damage. 8K and sustainability, another issue. And the writer here says, what was I thinking? How could I even use this title when an 8K TV uses so much electricity? Streaming eclipses cable and satellite TV in the U.S. That's kind of obvious these days. RTBF, this is the state broadcaster in French-speaking Belgium, wants to shut off its FM and TV transmissions because there's so much streaming going on. And every year I talk about the Super Bowl, and you can see that the use has gone up, streaming has gone up significantly from 2021. It goes up every year. There were minor gripes about quality and 6% video start failures. Here's a story that says sports streaming is busted because of the latency, because now that people are betting on sports, what happens when the streaming introduces what this person is calling upwards of 45 seconds of delay. But here's again, the overall viewing, and this according to NBC, the average television audience was 101 million and another 11 million streamers. So yeah, streaming is getting up there, but it's only up to about 11% of what people are getting via television broadcast or television broadcast that's carried on cable or satellite. And there are some slightly different numbers at the URL at the bottom. I told you before about BBC 3 that went off the air and tried just streaming, and their viewership tanked, and so BBC 3 returned to broadcast. And here's another interesting thing about broadcast while we're talking about sustainability. This is a project for measuring sustainability of different forms of delivery, and the results are astonishing. It's not even close. The transmission over the air is vastly, vastly more sustainable than any form of streaming. Nevertheless, here's Sky TV, and they have a new TV that they're selling, and they say, oh, we're not going to do any satellite systems anymore. We're only going to deliver via fixed line. But meanwhile, in the satellite market, here's a story about the Canadian startup Kepler, and they want to introduce 115,000 satellites in their system. These are low Earth orbit satellites, so there's much less latency, but that's a lot of satellites. Here's a report that NSR, Northern Sky Research, did on mega constellation impacts. And by their calculations for Starlink Generation 1, the break-even price should be $33 per megabit per second per month, which sounds like a lot. And if that's the case, then it may be that Starlink is actually selling things for below break-even. But here's a bit more on the geostationary satellites. I mentioned that Kepler is about 115,000 satellites. The Rwanda Space Agency wants to launch more than 327,000 satellites. And there's debris. The European Space Agency currently says more than 36,000 pieces of debris that are larger than or equal to 10 centimeters. And one piece of debris cracked a window on the International Space Station in 2016. China destroyed a defunct weather satellite, and there are 3,000 pieces of that are being tracked. And there was a 2009 collision between an Iridium satellite and a defunct Russian military satellite, and that generated 1,000 pieces of larger than 10 centimeters. So kind of a serious problem. And is this going to be a SAG safety issue now that a movie was actually shot in space with an actor at the International Space Station? And here's a story that a solar storm destroyed 40 new SpaceX satellites, but hey, that's a tiny fraction of what the constellation is. There are also problems with the cloud. Here's an interesting tweet from WQXR, a classical music station in New York, and this was when Amazon Web Services had an outage in December, and so they're saying, gee, sorry that you can't reach us, but try tuning into us on the radio. Here's a list of outages, and you can see that last one on the right. That's the one that was affecting that radio station, but you can see it affects Microsoft Azure, it affects Google, it affects Amazon. And so Larry Ellison says a major customer told him that Oracle's cloud never ever goes down. Well, sorry, it does. There's a story from March and another one from July about outages in Oracle's cloud. But here's a post on LinkedIn, and they're saying, oh, sorry you guys who were affected by today's outage, we weren't. And why weren't they? Well, he doesn't explain it all, but is it because they're doing hybrid cloud or multi-cloud? There's some interesting discussions about that at Breakfast Roundtable. Artificial intelligence, we have quite a bit that's going on today. And again, a reminder that there was a presentation on it at last year's retreat. Last year's presentations are available to HPA members. Here's a warning that AI-generated faces are seen as more trustworthy than real ones. That's from another one of last year's presentations. It shows that you can actually map a dancer's movements onto the bodies of people who can barely move their limbs, let alone dance. So AI has come a long way. On Monday in the U.S., Canon showed its free viewpoint system at the NBA All-Star Game. This allows you to position a virtual camera anywhere in three-dimensional space. And here's a story. People had retinal implants to allow the blind to see, and then the company that put them in decided, we don't want to be in that business anymore. And so the people who have the implants are literally left in the dark. Democratization of hardware. Blackmagic Design keeps taking these full-page ads in the New York Times for switchers and things like that. And here is a little tiny camera about the size of a grain of sand. Tip of the hat to Ed Grogan for calling that to my attention. And if you have a little tiny camera like that and you don't have any room for a zoom lens, another tip of the hat to Ed Grogan, here's a liquid crystal metal lens that allows an electric zoom. By applying a current, you can get the lens to zoom without any size to it whatsoever. So that's kind of interesting. And then something that probably is not going to catch on as well, a person in Japan invented a lickable screen for TV so that you can imitate food flavors. Thank you, and I know I rushed through that, but a PDF of these slides is available at bit.ly/tr22year.